Hi, welcome to Film Music Mentor. Today's topic, how to avoid a lawsuit. So how to avoid a lawsuit? Well, I made that a little bit hyperbolic, but there's a lot of things about music law and licensing law. So I brought an expert. Today I have a special guest, Daniel Sirkin from Daniel Sirkin Law. Daniel is an entertainment attorney, and he's going to tell us some of the most common music legal issues having to do with film. Welcome, Daniel.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Thanks for having me today. As Andrew said, I'm going to be here talking a little about some of the common issues and concerns that come up when you're dealing with music and film and television productions. Before I begin, I should add a little disclaimer that nothing I say here today is constituted as legal advice. It's for general guidance only. If you do have a particular issue, you should reach out to a lawyer. So let's get started then. First, with a little background, I think about music and film and television. So when you're thinking about putting music in your film or television production, there's a few common misconceptions that people come up with. Often they think, well, I'll just fair use it. Fair use is a phrase that people throw around casually, thinking that either because it's on the internet or because they're only using a de minimis amount of the music, that they'll have some sort of exception to use music.
So that's not true.
Not true. Fair use is a very specific, narrow defense for copyright infringement, and in most cases, it's not going to be a defense that you're going to be able to rely on.
Right.
Usually, when you hear a piece of music, chances are, with a few exceptions, that someone else owns it, and you're going to need to get rights in order to utilize it in your film or your television program.
So there are a few different kinds of rights to music. Maybe you could help us understand the difference between sync rights, mechanical rights, and performance rights.
Let's do that. So, as a film and television producer, when you want to take a piece of music that's, let's say, commercially released, famous song, and put it into your production, you're going to need to get a sync license. That means that you're going to be synchronizing the song with audiovisual or with visuals, pardon me, and you're synchronizing them, so it's called a sync license. That sync license is usually going to have to be negotiated with the publisher who owns the composition side of a musical work.
Mhm.
If you want to use the actual recording that the famous band made of that famous song, you're going to need to negotiate with a label for the master side of that as well.
Mhm.
That can often be expensive, and that's why in some situations you might only negotiate for a sync license and then do a cover version, or have a music composer like Andrew do a cover version of your song.
So, for instance, just to use an example, let's say we want to use the song Uptown Girl by Billy Joel. It would be one license to get the song itself from the publisher for someone to sing, and then it would be another step to have the actual recording that Billy Joel performed. It's a two-step process.
Absolutely, it's a two-step process, and it's two separate licenses that you're going to need to get.
Mhm.
As I mentioned, getting the actual recording, the master side, tends to be even more expensive, and so there's other options, such as creating a cover, getting a commissioned music commissioned for the cover, and if the expense is an issue, even on the sync side of it, there's the possibility of trying to create music similar to what you want. Not too similar, because then you're getting into copyright infringement.
Mhm.
But also, often you can work with music composers to try to find an original composition, an original song that kind of has the feeling and the essence of what you're looking for,
Mhm.
without infringing any copyrights on either side. And a lot of times, this commission can be a lot more cost effective.
Right, and that's called a sound alike. Call that a sound alike. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of the things you want to be careful with a sound alike is if you approach the publisher or the label to use the song and they say no, and then you do a sound alike that's too similar, that could get you in trouble.
Absolutely. Anytime you put them on kind of notice that you're planning to look for their music, their job is to police things. So if you're going to move forward with the sound, like, I'd advise you not to reach out to the publisher in the first instance, because then you're going to be on their list.
Right. Absolutely. I actually had a situation just recently where I was asked to write a theme song for a show, and they wanted it to be very much like a different piece where the opening graphic was cut to it, and I was very particular about making things different and pointing that out to the producers that I did this here to avoid any similarities to the original. So it takes a little bit of finesse with the sound alike.
Yeah, it is a little bit of an art rather than a science, and it's nuanced. And so you want to be working with someone who really knows those nuances to make sure that you stay clear of any copyright infringement.
Right.
So so far we've been kind of talking mostly about either getting licenses for a popular work. Talked a little bit about commissioned music,
Hmm.
getting original music made for you. Two other possible ways to obtain music for your production are music libraries
Hmm.
and public domain music. And so the easiest way to get music for your production is to use public domain music. In most cases, for any musical work that was created after 1978, after January 1st, 1978. Um, the copyright on that music will last for the life of the artist plus 70 years. If there is music that's older and has fallen to the public domain, it's free to use. And the beauty of that is that unlike getting a sync license and a master license and where you're sometimes limited in the types of usage that you have. A
Hmm.
lot of times, if you're able to pony up for the sync license or the master license, your rights could be very narrow. The term of use could be narrow,
Hmm.
and especially for an episodic television production, for example, you're going to want to get perpetual rights.
Right.
With public domain work, you can use it however you want, wherever you want, as much as you want of it, and you're not limited by any of those concerns.
Got a quick question about that. So, if you wanted to use Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, everyone knows that ba 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 bum ba 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 bum. So that's obviously public domain. However, if I have a recording of the New York Philharmonic performing that, they would own the recording.
That's correct. Assuming that that recording had not yet fallen to the public domain, while you could use the composition side of Beethoven's Fifth, meaning the notes and the actual sheet music, any recording that was made that's copyrighted and protected, you wouldn't be able to use without getting a separate license. So
Right.
you could have you or you could find someone to recreate Beethoven's Fifth. You could absolutely use that however you wanted to, but using an existing recording, again, you have to go out and get a license.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of a tricky thing. So if there's a recording that is a piece of music that's public domain, make sure that that you're allowed to use the recording that you have or commission a similar one.
Yeah, if it hasn't been clear, there's really two sides to every piece of music. There's the composition,
Mhm.
which is sort of the songwriting of it, and then the master, which is the actual recording.
Right. So there's the musical composition, which is it's a little bit of a confusing element because the musical composition is a kind of a cerebral thought. We buy music on CD or downloads, or it's the music itself, not the recording, that is public domain.
Yeah, the easiest way to think about it is kind of in the older days when you had a pianist who had a piece of sheet music, and you could see that those notes could be played by many different people and recorded in many different ways.
Mhm.
But nowadays, the idea of having a composition separate from the recording is almost some sort of a ethereal, yes, intellectual concept.
Yeah, it's a little bit heady, um, but it's an important distinction and one that you'll need to keep out of trouble.
So another way to get obtain music for your production is music libraries,
Mhm.
and there are big companies out there that have substantial music libraries that you can purchase music from, and there's smaller companies. I know some like Foursquare and Seven and have great music libraries as well. It's often more cost effective. That will allow you to obtain music for your production. That music is cleared and ready to go, so you don't have to worry about some of the items that we were talking about earlier about getting licenses from various parties. That music's cleared and ready to go. It often can be, well, not fully customized like commissioned work. It can be a little bit more customized, or set for your needs.
Mhm.
And you also normally will have pretty good usage rights, and often not as limited as it would be if you were trying to get rights for more famous commercial music.
Right, and in these music libraries, they want to make a deal with you, and they want you to use their music, and so I found they're very flexible and willing to work with you. They don't want to get taken advantage of like anybody else, but they do work with you, and it's a good source. It's used a lot in, especially in reality TV and cable TV. It's almost exclusively these music libraries.
Yep, absolutely.
Be sure to join me for part two of how to avoid a lawsuit with entertainment attorney Daniel Sirkin.